Welcome to Nerd Alert, brought to you by The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D. I'm Jeff Rubin here with Splitsider editor Adam Frucci and Kotaku editor Stephen Totillo. On today's episode, we are going to be interviewing a quadriplegic gamer who plays games like Call of Duty using his face. He is going to tell us what developers can do to make their games more handicapped accessible, because everyone deserves the opportunity to waste time playing Xbox. We are also going to be talking about Battlefield 3. This week, EA revealed that those who pre-order the game at certain retailers will receive an in-game advantage in the form of exclusive weapons. Some are upset and threatening to boycott the game, as if those who pre-order weren't going to just destroy everyone anyway. Is preserving your morals worth not playing the new Battlefield? But first, let's talk about the Chinese democracy of video games. After first being announced in 1997, Duke Nukem Forever was finally released this week, and after 14 years of complaining about endless delays, gamers are now complaining that the game is terrible. Are their concerns fair? Steven?
Yes, they're totally fair. As a gamer, you have the right to complain if a game sucks, and the game sucks.
For the sake of argument, let's say this exact game with these exact graphics came out a decade ago. Would it have been good then?
Would have already been late, I think, if it came out a decade ago, right? But the problem is, you can't separate how long it's been made with the quality of the game. It's like, okay, you tell jokes sometimes, right? So let's say you were working on a fart joke for 14 years.
I am.
You are, right? I can't wait.
It's a really, really good fart joke.
It's gonna make you think.
Okay. But then you might expect a sublime fart joke, a Shakespearean fart joke. It wouldn't be enough if it was just a fart joke. It wouldn't be enough if it was just like, oh yeah, it's crude Duke Nukem, this would have been what it was going to be like 10 years ago, and that's enough, and that's fine. I'm holding it to a standard of, it's 2011, I'm playing a Duke Nukem game. Can this hold up compared to anything else that I've put into my Xbox 360? And no. I didn't play the games back then that much, so, you know, to be honest, I was never into the Duke character.
That's the problem. You don't get it.
Oh,
See,
I don't get it.
let me explain it. He's kind of the king, right? And he's got this attitude.
Anybody who was into those games when they were 14 years old is now 30 and does not connect to this character at all. It's a character designed for adolescent boys who are like, oh, boobs in a guy with a bad attitude, and now like a 30-year-old who has nostalgia for it is like, boy, this is embarrassing that I used to be into this character.
I always have this fear when I'm playing an old game and I wind up hating the old game that maybe everybody who thought I was wasting my time playing games was right.
No, don't reflect. Don't do that. Dangerous, man. No, don't do it. Don't look back.
Looking forward, now that we've turned the corner, the game is finally out, do you think there's a chance there's ever going to be another Duke Nukem game, or is this it?
I don't see how they could make another Duke Nukem game. It's like cursed.
Yeah, I gotta disagree though with Adam. There definitely will be another Duke Nukem game, because Gearbox, the company that finally brought this game out, I don't think that their pride could handle this being all they did for all that effort.
Who still cares about Duke Nukem? Like, who's the audience?
Well, we're talking about it.
We're talking about it just as like, oh, remember this thing that when I was 16 years old I cared about, and now it's like, oh yeah, remember this? This is a weird thing that now exists and is awful. Like, why? How is that a good base to relaunch a franchise?
Duke Nukem feels like he's a little bit tied to a specific era. He's super 90s-y in like a Crash Bandicoot kind of way.
It just doesn't fit into the era we're living in at all. It's just really incongruous when you're like looking at his haircut, like the fact that he's like, oh, he's smoking a cigar. He's a badass. Really?
There's a moment in the game where you drink a beer, because, you know, Duke's
what a badass.
Yeah. And he gets drunk after one beer, which is not very badass. His vision's all blurry. But as soon as he drinks it, he says, "You're my boy, Blue." He yells, "You're my boy, Blue." And I couldn't decide if he was referencing guys that drink and yell, "You're my boy, Blue," or if he was a guy that was drinking and yelling, "You're my boy, Blue."
I don't think there's any level of irony in the Duke Nukem universe. Everything he does is completely sincere.
This game has been the #1 most unreleased piece of vaporware for over a decade. Now that it's finally out, who moves up to the top spot?
So there's two candidates. StarCraft Ghost, supposed to be like a first-person or maybe third-person shooter in the StarCraft universe. They announced it in 2002, they being Blizzard, to make StarCraft, World of Warcraft, and what have you. They repeatedly deny that the game is canceled, but 2002. So that's one of our candidates. The other one is Half-Life 2 Episode 3.
Yeah,
first Half-Life came out in '98. Second one came out in 2004. Half-Life 2 Episode 1. It was going to be an episodic series.
It was going to be an episodic series because they didn't want long delays in between games.
They didn't want the big gaps. So Episode 1 came out in 2006. Episode 2 came out in 2007. Episode 3 came out Not yet.
And the remarkable thing is, even with all those delays, all those Half-Life games came out since they announced Duke Nukem Forever. Moving on, EA announced this week that Battlefield 3 would more realistically simulate war by being inherently unfair. Gamers who pre-order the game from specific retailers will have access to exclusive in-game weapons, giving them an advantage. Will this stop you from playing Battlefield 3? Adam.
I don't think so. I mean, I feel like it's an annoying thing. It's lame that they're doing it, but in the end, it's like a very specific and small gripe. I just feel like there are a lot of problems in the world. If I'm going to really stand up for something, it shouldn't be unfair DLC for Battlefield 3.
There is a precedent, though, that people have complained about DLC before, and companies have reacted. I mean, there was this problem with Battlefield Bad Company 2, where people complained about the early release, the gold weapons or whatever it was, I think, and EA did back down on that.
Such great video game logic, by the way, that the weapon made of gold is the most powerful.
It's James Bond logic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Horse armor from Oblivion.
Yeah.
So this was like a big to-do at the beginning of the Xbox 360, $2.50 of real money that you had to pay to put armor on your horse. People complained, and eventually they knocked the price down. So if you do find ways to complain, again, it's not really something to go pick it outside about, right?
Right.
But they will sometimes change these things. But companies love doing this pre-order thing. They love it.
Horse armor was kind of the beginning of this DLC thing. We were so young then, when we were only upset about the horse armor. DLC was kind of this new concept, and it always seemed like it was marching to this area.
It's all steps of them testing the water to see how far they can push it. Like the horse armor, like, all right, a little too far. We'll wheel it back a little. Like, in a perfect world, they would have us buy every single item for $4 each.
The DLC imbalancing, I mean, EA is claiming that it's not imbalancing the game. It's just getting you more weapons. So maybe they know what they're talking about, but I'm not so sure. The fact is, companies like doing this stuff, and the most successful model for video games out there right now is the free-to-play model that was first big in Korea, that we're seeing more and more in the United States. These are free games where you do pay for everything that's cool in the game.
You want to feel like you own the game. You want to feel like I have everything this game has to offer. You don't want to feel like, oh, well, I only have 80% of this game, and I need to pre-order from 3 different stores and then buy all this DLC to actually get the experience that I'm playing.
Moving on from fake problems to real problems, our final guest today is a quadriplegic gamer who is asking developers to make games more handicapped accessible. Please welcome via robo guest Chuck Bittner. Thanks for joining us today, Chuck.
Glad to be here.
Chuck, could you describe your condition?
Well, I'm a quadriplegic. I was in a car accident, and basically a quadriplegic is somebody who can't move. I can't move from my chest down, and my hands have impairment that I can't actually use my hands at all in some of my arm functions.
How long was it after the accident until you said, I'm ready to start playing video games again?
Well, growing up, I was a gamer, hardcore, like Super Nintendo, Sega Master System, all those games. And it was after my accident, I played some games on PC a little bit here and there, but really it was when my dad got a PlayStation and started playing zombies online with my brother, Nazi zombies in Call of Duty, that they were having so much fun. I'm like, I think I can do this, and I want to try it. So, it was probably about 8 years after my accident.
And Call of Duty is a somewhat complex game to pick up and play, even if you're using your hands. How do you manage?
Well, video on my YouTube channel, I show that I hold the controller to my face and just maneuvering around using the sticks and using my upper lip to fire as I jump around from button to button.
How long did it take you to work out that system?
Probably took me like 2 months. When I first started playing it, I went through the campaign of World at War. Then I went online for my first free-for-all, and I went 1 and 25.
That one was me.
It was horrible. I'm like, I just totally crashed this team. So 1 and 25 was pretty bad. But so it took about 2 months, and then now I'm pretty good at it.
When you play online, you're competitive.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. My KD is like 1.5, which most people who are on my YouTube account leave me messages. They're like, you're better than me and I have hands. They're like, I quit.
When I'm playing a video game, ideally, if the game is good enough, I'm not thinking about my hands or how I'm controlling the game. I get lost in it, and then I am that space marine. Are you still able to do that?
Oh, that totally happens. When I was playing Portal 2, I was so engaged. Once you get used to the controls, and I'm able to, with Call of Duty, it's just second nature now. I can just go right at it, and I don't even really think about it. I'm just thinking about how I'm going to attack my next victim.
Now, tell me more about this button remapping petition you started.
What I've been doing is that for the last year plus, I've been doing the custom button remapping petition. Now, for those who are listening and don't really know what remapping is, it's the ability in a game, instead of just having presets that most games ship with, usually 2 or 3 or 4 presets, remapping is the ability to go in and in the software of the game, just assign what button functions do what. So if you want jump to be different than Y, you want to change it to you know, X or something like that, you can do that.
You've seen that over and over again, but you probably never pay it a second thought.
It used to be kind of a standard, and it's standard on PC. It has been for years, since the beginning. So it's something that really is important for disabled gamers, because if I go into a game and I can't remap and move a button around, then some games I just can't even play.
I think online petitions generally something of a waste of time, but what I like about this one is I think it's something that when you hear it, you maybe aren't aware that it's a problem, but as soon as you hear it, you're like, oh, of course all games should be doing that.
This has been a petition for a year? Like, are companies not listening?
I've had some nice developer feedback. I went to PAX East this year. The developer feedback at PAX was pretty awesome. They're like, wow, we never thought that if we don't have remapping, you guys can't play our game.
Are there any games that you want to be playing but you can't because the controls aren't remappable?
Games like Halo, that's something that a lot of people, when they say they jump from game to game, going from Halo to Call of Duty, that's confusing. I'd like to be able to play Halo, but I can't because I can't aim down sight.
You have a 1.5 kill death ratio in Call of Duty and you don't aim down the sights ever?
Yeah, I didn't aim down sights in Modern Warfare 2, but they added an ADS lock on Black Ops, so now I can hit ADS lock.
So before you had to hold down the button to kind of hold up the gun and look through it, now you just press a button, you're holding up the gun until you press the button again. What about the sequences in Call of Duty that aren't just shooting people? It's like in Modern Warfare 1, I think it is, where you have to climb the ice wall, or Modern Warfare 2?
Yeah, it was Modern Warfare 2. There's a video of that on my YouTube that's like, I'm going to do this, guys, I'm going to try, and I had to get all crazy with how I was holding the controller and using it sideways on my face. But I ended up getting through it, which was great. And but if I could remap it, I just would have switched the buttons a little bit, and I would have been over it in like 10 seconds. Just a basic function like that makes games more accessible. Some companies are adding, and I've had some companies say that they're willing to just commit to doing remapping. But getting the bigger companies like Activision and companies like that involved is a little bit more challenging.
I think this is cool. I'm wondering, though, is the counter argument that if you allow the button remapping, that it's going to make the game, it's going to break the game, and then it's going to make it too easy for everybody to find some configuration that's going to make them, be awesome at the game? Have you run into that?
You had to ruin this.
No, that's definitely been a concern. I've talked to a couple developers, and they fear this type of abuse or something like that. Most of the people who bring this up, usually other people bring up, well, if it's open to everybody, then it's a fair advantage for everybody to have that playing field. But I'd say if something like that does pop up, you would patch it, you'd tweak it, you'd make it something that you could just fix it so that it wasn't a real major problem.
Can't we just all agree not to be jerks so that Chuck can enjoy Modern Warfare 2?
I'm into it. I just have,
Yeah, why don't you want to enjoy video games?
No, it's people will look to exploit it, you're right.
I'm sure they will, but I'm ready to sign Chuck's petition. I'm into it.
Chuck, how can we help? How can we sign your petition?
You can go to my website that has a link on it, askacapper.com. You can go right, and that'll take you to a petition online.
You heard him, askacapper.com. Head there, sign the petition. Thank you again to Adam and Steven. Check out Splitsider and Kotaku. Nerd Alert will be back next week to talk about the release of Weird Al's Alpocalypse, so I'm not going to want to miss that episode. Until then, here is CGY, our bad special effects of the week. Later, losers.